Welcome to another episode of the Active Bariatric Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Tirapelli, bariatric sports dietitian. I am so excited today to have on physical therapist and running coach Leah Avery, also known as leah.runs.dpt on Instagram. Leah has been practicing physical therapy for nearly a decade, which is also when she began her running career. Prior to that, she was a competitive swimmer, starting at the age of 8 and retired her senior year of college. During her career, she was a D1 All-American and competed at the Olympic trials. Leah's athletic career was anything but linear, and she faced many hardships, which originally led to her career in physical therapy. However, after starting her running journey, it was clear she had an unhealthy relationship with athletics. Her mission is to help runners reach their potential in a healthy manner by treating the person, not just the runner, and help them understand that running adds value to our lives, but it is not what makes us valuable. Thank you so much for being here today, Leah. I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Yeah, the last couple episodes. So I had a endurance bariatric runner a couple episodes ago. And then the last episode, I talked a little bit about nutrition for endurance training. And so I wanted to bring you on just to glean some of your expertise on, how to develop a running program for folks that have no idea, where to begin if they want to start training for, some endurance events. So thank you so much.
Yeah, this is going to be good. This is good.
Yeah, awesome. Well, tell us a little bit more about your journey in, becoming a physical therapist, also your history as a runner and becoming a running coach.
Yeah. So like you said, I was a swimmer growing up, started at the age of 8, dove right in literally, and it kept going till my senior year of college. It was, like I said, anything but glamorous. It was tough. I made it far, but there were a lot of trials that came with it, which looking back, I'm thankful for. It definitely made me the person that I am. But yes, so I had, injuries, all those kinds of things. And just having, seeing the PT athletic trainers that were there to kind of support us along the way, that really made me want to be a PT. I thought I want to be in the corner for those people. So went to PT school right after undergrad. And then I picked up running because I felt pretty lost without swimming, but I didn't want to swim anymore. And I needed that drive, just something to work towards. So I picked up running in grad school. And I did my first marathon, I guess it was 10 years ago. So it was right at the end of grad school. And then I got hooked and I've been doing them ever since.
Awesome.
So I worked in the clinic for about 7 or 8 years. I did some outpatient, did some inpatient, all different kinds of things. But running kept kind of coming more forward in my life. I thought I really want to use my running and my PT. So then I got into run coaching, where we do more of the coaching, but we also use our mind as a PT because they kind of go hand in hand. So really just been an athlete my whole life is kind of how I ended up in the PT world.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I can relate to, so I played soccer growing up too and played it in college. And I had another guest on a couple episodes ago. Her name was Allie, and she was actually a swimmer as well. And we were talking about how when we finished our careers, it was like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore because you spend so much time, your life is kind of around, if you get to an elite level, that's all you do. And I can relate to you going, okay, now I want to do something else. What new interest, what kind of will give me some aspirations, things to work towards, because that's something that's probably part of you, being used to training and that kind of thing. Is that kind of how that led into running?
Oh yeah, definitely. I did not want to swim anymore. That ship had sailed. I didn't want to be around it, but yes, I just loved working towards something. And that felt like it was what made me tick, was just having something there to work towards, even if it, the time didn't matter. It was just getting up every day and having something else besides, at the time it was school, but it's whatever it is, work, life, whatever. It's just something else for you,
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And are you currently training for a marathon?
Yes, I'm actually doing Chicago Marathon, which is in less than 4 weeks. So coming up,
Yay.
coming up very soon. I have this random goal to do 10 marathons before I turn 40. So I just turned 37. So this will be number 9. So I have one more. I got plenty of years to get that last one in before I turn 40.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh my gosh. So I've done 2 marathons. I ran the LA and I ran the Chicago. I'm actually born and raised from Chicago. And I love that course. Now I don't know. It's been a long time. So I don't know if the course is the same, but it was in October and it was a nice, cool, brisk morning. It was a pretty flat course except for a couple maybe going over some bridges and things, but otherwise it was a beautiful course. So I wish you luck in that in a couple weeks. That's exciting.
Thank you. Yes, I've done Chicago before, so it's a good one. It's a fun one. The crowd is wonderful. It's good. Yeah,
absolutely.
Good. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit then about training for endurance, because so my audience includes folks who have had bariatric surgery. Perhaps they've never participated in endurance events, before. And initially after bariatric surgery, patients are advised to begin slowly with movement. So pretty much right afterwards, they're allowed to begin, walking, but, lifting and those types of things are usually, until after they've healed and so forth. So for someone that's just, wants to get started, maybe training for something and starting small with, whatever it might be, a couple miles, 5K, whatever, where do they begin? What would you say is like an appropriate amount of days per week or distances that you feel would be a good beginning amount?
Yeah. So we're just starting from scratch, which usually if you have some kind of surgery, you have to start from scratch. And I think the biggest thing to remember is everybody starts from scratch. A lot of people think, oh, I can't do it because I've never done it before. Well, we all are there at some point. And it really just depends on, what your body is used to tolerating. But if we're just going flat, you haven't really ever done anything, 3 days a week is usually what I always recommend. Now, that is just going to include if we're going to do a run walk at first, 3 days a week, but you can also, that doesn't mean the other 4 days have to be nothing. They can be some kind of strength training. They can be some kind of cross training. But the biggest thing I always recommend, you have to have a rest day. I think people they want to start out and they're like, I'm going to do 7 days a week all the time. And that never works for any of us, regardless of our fitness level. You cannot never take a rest day or your body will make you take a rest day. So I always back that up with, yes, let's do 3 days a week, start there, or 4 days a week, but always take a rest day as well. So important. So important. And that's me as a coach and a PT. PT more, I would say.
And if someone's just going to start training, let's just say they want to do a 5K, would they start off with just, walking a mile and kind of increase gradually to that 3.1? How does that work?
Yeah. So typically let's just see if you can walk a mile. If you can do that, it's really usually if you are wanting to do a 5K, never done it before, we're going to do it based on time to start out, because time is really what your body knows. A lot of times when you see a training plan, it'll be like, let's do X amount of miles, but your body doesn't know miles. It knows time and it knows effort. So that's the biggest thing to focus on is time on your feet. That's what you want to get used to, is you being out there for that amount of time. So yes, let's see if you can walk a mile first, see how long that takes you. And then we'll eventually get to the point where we'll get you to do maybe an interval where you run for say 1 minute, and then the walk is going to be 3 to 4 minutes. And then we're going to close that gap. So let's run another minute and then let's close the gap to maybe walk 2 minutes. And then we'll get a 1-to-1 ratio, and then it'll start to switch. So we'll run for 2 minutes and then we'll walk for a minute, and then run gets longer, walk gets less and less. So that's how you build yourself up, as you less running, more walking, then the walking comes down, then the running can go up. But yeah, I usually always recommend time-based, because the mileage can also feel overwhelming as well. But again, when you do a race, your body doesn't know the distance. A mile is a mile. It doesn't know. So you need to do that based on the time that you're going to need to be out there.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay. Yeah. And I love that how you transition from, at first when we're beginning, we're walking more, of the distance or the time. Yeah. And then as you become, more fit, you practice things longer, you can then transfer over to more running, and more of the walk kind of becomes less. I love that. Okay. And when you're developing a training program for something maybe longer, so let's say like a half marathon, what does a typical training week look like? And again, I'll just say this with a caveat. So we wouldn't want someone that just had surgery to be like, okay, my first event's going to be a half marathon. I'm sure you could please say something about that. But you know what I mean? Once we get to that point, you've done some other distances, then we get to this point. What does a typical training week look like?
Yeah. So if we're going to say we're like early on in the training phase. So I would recommend, even if you're going to do a half marathon, let's make it 12 to 14 weeks of a training block. But that doesn't mean if you're going to do a half marathon, you need to have a little bit of experience with running prior to that. If you're going to do a 12 to 14 week plan. So yes, it may start at 14 weeks, but you need to have a little bit before that. You don't just want to come in, I can't even walk a mile yet, but I want to do a half marathon. Doesn't mean you can't do it eventually, but you need more time than that. But yeah, if we're on like week 4 of a half marathon training, it would typically be 4 days a week. We're going to get to that point. Some people can run 5 days a week. Some people run 6 days a week. Some people do 3. It really depends on your ability level and also how much time you have, because we all have lives. We're not professional runners. We want to be, but we're not. So yeah, typically 4 days a week. There are things called like speed workouts where you can add in some faster running and things like that. But if we're just trying to get to the finish line, it's typically going to be 3 easier runs, like shorter. So we're going to go maybe 3 to 5 miles, or depending on your pace, we maybe want you to be on your feet for an hour, each one of those. Again, depends on the pace and what we think your expected finish time will be. The only reason that we do that, it's not to say, oh, you're not a fast runner. It's simply to prepare your body to be out there for the time that we think it's going to be out there. So yeah, 3 days a week, shorter during the week. And then you always want to do some kind of longer run on the weekends. So let it be, again, you're usually going to never need to get to that 13.1 miles. That's not necessary. Typically the longest run you'll get to is about 10 or 11. That's all you need. We can talk about the marathon later. You don't need to get to 26 miles. Please don't ever do that. Not necessary. Unless you're a pro, but we're not. So, but yeah, 3 to 4 days a week, 3 midweek runs, and then 1 longer run on the weekend. And then also strength training is pretty important. It just gets your body ready for that. And it helps you. It's not about building all this muscle, not for you to get bulky. It's simply supporting your body as it goes through that. Because when you're on your feet, you have a lot, maybe 3 to 4 times your body weight going through your joints. So let's support them. That's what strength training is there, is think about creating a natural brace for your joints is really what you can think of strength training as. It's not something to get you huge and, things like that.
Right.
Which a lot of people think, I don't want to get all this huge muscle. Well, that's not what we're here for. It's just support your body. Yeah. And injury prevention too. We can get to that, but.
Yeah, no, and that was going to be my next question, was just talking about the importance and benefits of strength training and cross training. Because like you said, we do hear that, like, oh, I'm a runner, I can't lift. And it's like, wait a minute, no. This is going to be helping you, especially if your course has more hills and you want to exert more power. And then like you mentioned, injury prevention is so key in a long training program, when you're doing these longer distances. So can you talk a little bit about, of course, should they be including this, and what types of, workouts would you suggest? Like, are they doing lower weights and higher reps? Like, I'll let you kind of go from there.
Yeah. So first of all, strength training is so important for runners. It has nothing to do with, if you run, it's going to make you slower. Does not work that way. If anything, it works the opposite. But, the main goal is obviously to keep you injury free, because unfortunately, when we train for races, our bodies just aren't used to it. So injuries can pop up, and it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It just means that you're exceeding the load that your body could tolerate at that time. Okay. I have so many people come to me and say, oh, I messed up, I got hurt. No. There's so many factors that go into getting hurt. And we can talk about that later too. But strength training, so important. It doesn't have to be crazy. I usually say 2 times a week, 20 minutes. That's all you have to do. You absolutely can do more if you want to. But if you're running, let running be your focus, but let strength training be there to support that running. 2 times a week, it's usually very simple. So we just want to go through the basics of what running is. So running is a single leg sport. If you think about it, that's what makes running different than walking is no 2 feet are on the ground at the same time. So that walking, you have both feet on the ground at the same time at a certain point, and running is simply just jumping from one leg to the other. Right. So we want to be balanced and stable while on one leg. So a lot of single leg movement, a lot of hinging at the hips, hit the bigger muscles, also hit the littler muscles like your calves and your feet, because they also take up so much of the load as well, especially your calves. Like I think your calves take on 5 times your body weight. So they take a lot of the brunt of running. So yeah, some of those accessory muscles, but yeah, kind of the basics. It's, we do strength training as far as like what I prescribe to people. And usually they say, this is it. I'm like, do it, see how it feels, and you're going to see the difference. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It doesn't have to be an hour. And we don't have time for that either.
Right. Absolutely.
Quick and efficient is what we want.
That's so true. And would you say, so full body on the 2 days a week, would you do full body? Or are you more focused on lower body, core? What do you kind of implement in a 20-minute workout?
Usually always put in there is upper body, because you are absolutely using your arms when you run, and your arms are kind of a window to your lower body. Obviously your legs are going to be more of the focus. But yes, upper body is always in there. Core is always in there. But when we say core, we don't lay down and do a sit up. If you do the single leg exercises, it's typically in some sort of balance way. So then if you're doing balance, you're going to engage your core. So a lot of times we'll say, let's focus on the core while doing this squat or this front raise or something like that, because you can always incorporate some kind of other movement within a movement. Combination movements are great. If you do like a squat with an overhead press, you squat down, push your arms up. You've got core, you've got your legs, you've got your upper body. So again, quick and efficient is what we want.
Absolutely. Save time. Yeah. And when we talk about cross training, what are some examples for cross training? So maybe, you've gotten into a higher mileage week and you're just like, look, I want to still do some cardiovascular, but maybe not running. What other cross training examples do you recommend?
Yeah. So cross training, we love cross training, especially if you're not able to tolerate the load of running yet, because again, it is a lot on your body, or you do get a little flare up. It's okay. It happens. Cross training is a great way to get that cardiovascular fitness in without the impact. So cycling is great. If you like to swim, that's great. Even a walk is great too. I would, say that cycling would be a little bit better, but anything that's going to get your heart rate up, but it's not going to be a high impact. So I also always recommend to stay away if you're training for a marathon or half marathon, really any distance at that point. Stay away from your HIIT exercises, like high intensity interval training. So we don't need to go to CrossFit. There's this new thing called F45, which is great in itself, but it's not necessary, because you're already getting that high intensity, that high volume with running. You don't need any more of it. So let's not add in 2 days a week of CrossFit. In a different time, you absolutely can, but not necessary right now.
Right.
And you're just going to, no. And you're just going to tip yourself over of that stress threshold that I like to talk about quite a bit. Just in injury prevention and things like that.
Yeah. I always talk to you about periodization, because I talk about nutrition periodization, and it kind of sounds like that mimics what you're saying here, because if you're in a training cycle for a race, right, for running a race or run, walk, whatever it is, that's the main focus. Now, if you want to do HIIT workouts and that type of thing during a different cycle, awesome, cool, do it. But I hear you saying, the endurance training is a lot of, it's a lot of load, it's a lot of intensity on your body. And then by going and doing other high intense workouts on the days you're not even running, it might be just overexerting yourself. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. It's just not, it's hitting more of what you're actually doing in running, and you don't need more of that. You've already got enough of that. And if you feel like you need more and you're ready for more, then let's add more mileage. But yeah, we don't need that. And when I say stress threshold, what that means is we all have a stress threshold, and running, whether or not our body views it as a good or a bad stress, it is a stress. So I say, if your stress is here, whether that be in life or other things that you're doing, and you add a run on top of it, and your stress is already way up here, and you add a run, you're tipping yourself right over, and it's a perfect place to get an injury, burnout, all the things. So it's something to really keep in mind, even if your life is stressful. If life stress is up, whether it be work, whatever it is, running needs to come down. And that's so important to keep that in mind, because your body will force you to come down if you don't do it.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And it's no fun of missing all this or putting in all this hard work to just, not be able to ultimately do what you've been training for. So this is a question I had received also from a listener. What are your thoughts on concurrent training with running and also muscle building? Can they be done together and be effective, or should they just be strictly like endurance focused versus, muscle gaining focused? What would you say?
No, I think you can definitely do that. It just depends on your goals. So if you've maybe run a race before and you want to try to get faster at that race, I wouldn't recommend trying to do muscle building at that time, because that's not what you need in order to go a whole lot faster. Gotcha. If that makes sense. So definitely not something you can't do together, but it depends on what your goals are, I guess you could say. So lots of people do heavy lifting and run at the same time, and that's great. Again, I would stay a little bit away from the stuff that's really going to get your heart rate high, like that CrossFit, those kinds of things, if you are doing higher mileage. But you can definitely do them both. It just depends on your goals.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. And what's the difference between like an injury and just soreness? Because something that we hear a lot amongst the bariatric population is, as folks go through that rapid weight loss phase, we often hear about a lot of like joint pain. And I think it's, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding from another colleague of mine who's a physical therapist said that, as their body shape changes, where there may have been more, cushion, so to speak, now without that, they're all of a sudden having more joint pain or things like that. And so then when they begin doing movement, it's like, oh my gosh, is this normal or am I like injured? So is there a way to detect like what's just soreness versus what's an injury and we need to stop?
Yes, that's a great question, and a question that we get all the time, which is, it's good. You need to learn, and it's something that you do kind of have to learn. Sure. But the biggest thing is, I always tell people, pain is information. So just remember that. And it's not necessarily something to fear. Now, there are times when running needs to get a hard stop, so that whether that be a bone stress injury, so like a stress fracture, actual bone break, stress reaction, those kinds of things, that's when you do absolutely have to stop running. But usually you don't have to be, let me just say, you don't have to be pain-free to run. Now, I don't want you to run through excruciating pain. That's not what I'm saying by any means. Right. But if something is, you just say, I kind of feel this, or this feels tight, or as I'm running, I feel this sensation. So let's look at it in the terms of, does it get better if you stop? That's a very good question to ask yourself. Does it get better as you warm up? Are you having pain after you run? Are you having pain in the night? Those are all things to look at. But general rule of thumb is, are you having to change your gait because of the pain? That's usually a big one. We don't need to run through that, because that's just going to cause more problems down the road. And again, is it only hurting you when you run? Then let's take a step back. The best thing you can do if you have an injury is to not just do nothing and then resume normal. That is, you're never going to progress with the injury. You have to dial it back, absolutely, but then you have to gradually get your body able to tolerate the load again. I know I've been talking about this load a lot, but that's really what an injury is it couldn't tolerate the load. Right. So dial it back. First thing to cut out would be, maybe let's do a run walk, something like that. But I guess I kind of get away from your question, but to go back to saying that, biggest thing, are you walking with a limp? Are you running with a limp? Are you able to, is it getting better as you run? Is it getting better with rest? This is where kind of like the PT comes into play. And, with that being said, don't be afraid to get help, even if it's just a minor something. You deserve it. You've worked hard to get to this point. So get somebody in your corner to help you,
Yeah. And asking for a referral to see a physical therapist, because a lot of, most insurance companies, if you see your primary care and they can refer you to a physical therapist, that's covered, if in terms of getting advice. And then in my experiences, when I've had lots of injuries, I tore my ACL in college. So my senior year, and then I had to rehab for a whole year. And I am so thankful for my physical therapist because she got me back to be able to play soccer at Division I level. And I would have known nothing. I would have done like that, like, oh, I got surgery, I'm healing. Let me just go play soccer again. No, there was tons of re-strengthening, weakened muscle around my knee, just learning the motion of movement and changing directions. I mean, there was so much to that. Of course, I know it's a little different than just running, but it sounds like what you're saying is starts and stops, hard starts and stops are not good. You're saying you should be building back into the movement that you should, that you're working towards. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We never want to just say, oh, I'm going to take 10 days off and then I'm going to start running the exact same way that I was running before. You need to, yes, maybe take the time off to let the pain come down and things to actually heal, but then gradually build yourself back up to where you were.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So as a physical therapist, what are some of the most common running injuries that you see? And are there any tips on how to prevent these or address them so people can kind of get back out there safely?
Yeah. I would say the most common one is Achilles or plantar fasciitis. Those two love to get flared up. And then probably runner's knee is a big one. And IT band syndrome is also another big one. But they're all connected. They all usually, like I said, everything is a window to the other part. So if your hips are weak, usually your knee or your ankle, your foot is going to take more of the brunt of it. So let's treat the whole thing. But the biggest thing, I guess the number one tip was don't do too much too soon. That is the gradual buildup is the key to helping your body be able to get used to it. So as much as it seems like, say you have the goal to run a half marathon and right now you can only, maybe run a mile. You don't need to get to 5 miles tomorrow. You have to gradually get yourself there. And too much, too fast, too soon is always where the injuries come in. If you roll your ankle in a pothole, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But the overuse injuries, Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, IT band is probably the top 3 that we see the most. And that's just because those, like I talked about before, those are the ones that you use the most. And they're really kind of the stabilizing muscles and they're going to get weak. They're going to fatigue out the quickest, I think, is a good way to put it. So again, I've said it too many times now, but your body being able to handle the load is what it is. Yeah.
And so I know I've had I've had some clients that have IT band issues. And something that you said that, I can relate to is, okay, the side of my knee hurts. Why are we doing butt exercises? Well, it's because like my physical therapist, she's like, because your hips and your butt need to fire properly and your gait's being impacted. And, and you guys know all the chain and all that kind of stuff. I was just like, why are we doing all this butt and hip stuff? I'm like, my knee hurts. Yeah. Can you kind of explain how that's connected just for folks to kind of understand that so that when you go, they're not like, what are we doing?
Yes. So specifically with the knee, so IT band syndrome can either be felt in the hip or the knee. But what IT band syndrome is you have a muscle at the top of your hip and and then there's a big tendon that run all the way down to the base of your knee. So the muscle that's connected to that tissue affects that entire chain. So if that muscle up here isn't able to help stabilize that, it's going to start feeling it. It's going to get tight and it's going to pull at the base of your knee. So that is why the IT band is huge and you can feel it in so many different places. And some people don't know it's in your hip and some people don't know it's in your knees. Like my knee's hurting, but it's actually my hip. Yes.
Got it.
Okay. It is very confusing, but yes, it's all connected.
That makes total sense. Okay. And so just another quick question. Is it important for people when they're doing training to do like a warm up and a cool down? Does that help with, warming up the muscles and preventing injury? What do you think?
Yeah. Warming up is great. It'll make you, number one, it's going to make your run feel so much better because sometimes if you just go out there cold turkey, the first mile is awful for however long you're out there. The first 5 minutes is terrible. But just priming your body to run is so helpful and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. And that's going back to like my strength training point. Nothing has to be fancy. And I think that's where you lose a lot of your ability to be consistent is it becomes so overwhelming. And especially if you're on social media, you kind of get wrapped up in all of these tips and things that you feel like you have to do, which is great. And I think people put them out there to help. but sometimes it could be just information overload. But yeah, a simple warm up. Usually I tell somebody, hey, do 5 squats, 5 lunges, see how you feel. If you do that and you're like, ooh, things feel a little creaky, we all know what that means.
Yes, totally.
Do a couple more. Do like a little jogging in place. I wouldn't recommend static stretching. Static stretching is not beneficial if you're going to go out and do something that's dynamic. So if you're doing something that's dynamic, do some dynamic stretching, whether it be, like I said, jogging in place. You can do lunges, squats, all different kinds of things like that. But yeah, I usually say do a couple squats, see how you feel. If you feel like you're good to go, do a couple more and set off. If it's early in the morning or you've been sitting all day, give your body some time to warm up. But again, it doesn't have to be complicated. 3 to 5 minutes, that's all you need. Yeah.
Perfect.
And then cool down.
Cool down. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to say, this is going to be more your territory, but if you have to choose between a cool down or getting something to eat afterwards, get something to eat. Okay. So that's more important to your recovery than any cool down or any fancy tool that you see out there, like those massage guns or whatever those things are. They're great, but don't let them be your first priority, and they're not going to magically fix you. You need that. So a cool down would just be like, hey, walk a few minutes, don't sit down in your car or sit down in your house if your heart rate is still, 150 or whatever it is.
Sure. Sense.
Just let it come down. But if you have to choose between a full on cool down or replenishing your body, pick the replenishing. Don't pick the cool down.
Okay. That makes total sense. Getting it from an expert. That's what I wanted to ask, because, like you said, you see all this stuff on social media, and it's like, this is why I want to bring on the experts, because I don't, you just don't want to have the wrong information, and it's like, okay, so what you're saying is I just need to kind of slow down, get my heart rate to come down. And while I'm doing that, I can be sipping on, maybe my shake with a banana or, getting some protein and carbs in to start replenishing and recovering basically.
Yeah. I mean, you can do, I'm not a dietitian, not nutrition expert by any means, but you can do all the things. And if you're not feeling correctly, it's a recipe for a disaster. So
Amen.
I will, yes, that is going to be, pick that over any exercise, anything. If you are not putting fuel in the tank, you are spinning your wheels. Absolutely. Yeah. So I will support you on anything you say there.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. I know, and it's like, I know it sounds like overwhelming. Like, we gotta eat, you gotta do this. Now I gotta do the training. Right. But I mean, the goal is, hey, I want to train for a 10K half marathon, whatever. And so, what you're saying is the importance of the training is equally as important as the fueling aspect and getting adequate sleep and managing your stress levels and things like that, because they all are taking a toll on our body. And if we're not at least being mindful of them and doing the best that we can, no one's going to be perfect. We're not going to always eat a perfect amount of carbs and protein, and, we're not going to have the perfect training program, and things will happen. But I guess what I would want folks to hear is just be mindful of it, make a good effort, you have a plan, and try to, put that into action as often as you can. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. There's no rules, things like that. You have to do the only way for you to be consistent is for it to be feasible to your life and to what you're doing. So don't get so caught up in, the training plans that you see out there can get so overwhelming, and, they don't know you. They don't know your life. They're not catered to you, and things come up. I mean, I've been training for marathons for years, and every single one, pretty much every week I have to change my plan because I'm a mom, and, it just life
happens.
Do flexible. Do what's going to be something, I think a lot of us get into this for longevity, and, that's why I'm in it. So do it for what's going to keep you in it for the long game, not to get you, somewhere faster. It really is the long game.
Yeah, I totally agree. And besides, some of the things we've mentioned in terms of, maybe biggest kind of mistakes that you've seen, and I'm not trying to focus on the negative, but just things that it's like, oh, hey, try to avoid these things because it'll help you to, succeed in achieving your goal. What are some of the biggest maybe things that you see that might increase your risk of injury or illness in the short term or long term?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to seeing what other people are doing and think, ooh, I need to do that too. Yes. And that usually ends you in the place of too much, too fast, too soon. And that is really what always gets in the way of ourselves, is that we get hurt or we get exhausted and we can't maintain it. So something that is feasible and maintainable to you is the number one thing. I think, again, it goes back to, if you get a plan off the internet, that's great. If you do that, make sure that it's something that you know that you can do. So if it's telling you to run 5 days a week and you simply don't have time to run 5 days a week, if you're like, well, I'm going to make it work, you're not going to make it work. And then you're going to be back at square one and you're going to be disappointed, and you don't want to do that. So make it realistic and, obviously challenging, because that's what, why we do these things, is to challenge ourselves. But make it realistic to you would be my number one recommendation.
I like that. Yeah. And are there any apps or like online tools that you have used that are helpful for maybe someone that's either a beginner and like wants to track their, their distances, their training program, or for maybe someone that's farther out that you have found that can be a helpful app to track mileage or times or paces or things like that?
Yeah, if you're simply just wanting to track it, you're not wanting a plan or anything like that. If you just want to track it, Strava is a great, basically, social media of running. Okay. So you get on there and you can find your friends that are on there too, and it tracks your mileage. It breaks down, all your runs for you, tells you like your splits, heart rate, elevation, all the things. Okay. So Strava is a great place to start. If you're wanting something that is a training plan that kind of guides your way through it, obviously we offer some of that, but yes. Like just general, Nike app is great. It's free and they have training plans on there. They also have guided runs that you can use. So they talk you through it. It's kind of like, if I've never done it, but I know Peloton has classes, somebody's doing it with you. So the run is just somebody that's running with you and they're like kind of coaching you through it, which I think is really cool. And it's kind of a good way to distract yourself. Yeah. So Nike has a great app for that. It's like the Nike running app, I believe, different from just the Nike app. But it's a great way to just kind of, if you're not comfortable having somebody like see everything that you're doing and you just kind of want to be in your own place, but have that there, that's a great place to start.
I love that. Okay. Strava and Nike running app. Okay, good. I have not heard of the Strava one, so I'm interested to check that out. I'll have to look into it.
Strava's great. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. And any like last advice that you have for someone that wants to begin training for an endurance event?
Yeah. I mean, I always would say anybody can do it. You just have to do it in the smart way and a way that's attainable to you. I've said that a few times, but it's not out of reach. It is challenging, but that's why we do it. And I love when people say they want to do it, because it truly can be life-changing. It really is. And so there's something about doing a race that just, regardless of the distance, it's so wonderful. In the running community, when you're out there, it doesn't matter your pace. Your pace does not matter. I think it's easy to see that on social media. Very much if you get into the running side of social media, there's a lot about pace, but pace doesn't matter. We love to say nobody cares because nobody does care how fast you're going. Yeah. They just love that you're out there. Yes. And if you want to believe in the good in people, go spectate a marathon and you will see it. I mean, it is just wonderful. So I would say don't be afraid to try and do it in a way that's going to work for you. It is the best way to go about it.
Yeah. And I'll just say in my own personal experience, I had done only 2 marathons. I trained with a group both times. I don't think I could have done it by myself because there were certainly those long runs on a Saturday where I was like, I really don't want to go. But guess what? I had friends that were waiting for me to show up so that we could run together. And that kind of accountability and support and, just guidance too. I was not an expert in that area at all. And I needed someone to tell me, this is what your mileage is going to be. This is what you should be aiming for a week. Of course, flexibility built in, like some weeks, hey, life happens. Like you said, you have kids, it doesn't happen all the time, but I had the guidance that helped me to get to the finish line, which is what I was looking for. So I also would recommend, finding, if you can, a local, training program. I love the in-person aspect, but I think the online can be good for folks as well. If they like, having just the app there, that's great too.
Yeah. There's so many options out there. Yeah. If you think you're more of a social runner, I think it's great. It's a great place to meet people. you never bond more than over a long run. I mean, you talk about all the aspects of your life. Yeah.
Yes.
Groups are great. They are.
Very
Absolutely.
true. Very true. So tell us more about your coaching, and, your program and where folks can reach out and learn more about that.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm a PT, but I do run coaching. So I work for another PT and also a run coach. Her name's Vicky Selecki. So she has a company called Train Smart, Run Strong. So we do a lot of different programs, but basically one-on-one run coaching where we basically are there to write the plan for you, but we're never there to get onto you. We're simply there to be in your journey. That's, if you have somebody that's in your face telling you that you need to do more, no,
Yeah.
It should be about supporting you. But yeah, so we offer, one-on-one coaching. We also do strength training because of our PT background, and we just find that really important. And we also have an app that has running specific strength training on there. It's like a monthly subscription, and it's unlimited classes through both of us, and we record them, and we do them with you, and we talk you through them as a PT, like why we're doing this exercise, why it's important, all self-paced, things like that. But yeah, we mainly do most of what we do through Instagram.
Sure.
So yeah, we have, again, the company's called Train Smart, Run Strong, but my Instagram, like you said earlier, is leah.runs.dpt. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So you guys, you can follow her there and check out the say it again, Train Smart, Run Strong.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's how honest to God, you guys listening, that's how I found Leah too, was because of course, on Instagram, checking folks out, but I have so many, folks that I work with one-on-one for the nutrition aspect of endurance training. And oftentimes they'll have questions for me, and that's not my area of expertise. And I really think physical therapists are, the experts in understanding how to move your body, and also because injuries happen, like you said, and how to prevent that best, as well as how to treat it so that you can get back out there, because that's part of the journey oftentimes. And I just so appreciate your expertise. So please, you guys listening, give her a follow, check out what she has to offer.
And I will say, last thing, I don't ever want anybody, I have a lot of people that come to me and say, I'm too slow to need a coach. Nope. We're not here to, obviously, if you want to get faster, that's a great goal, but we're not here to make you faster. We're simply here to support you and get that longevity. Not just me, but any run coach out there. Like it's not about, you need to be a certain speed in order to deserve that. If it's something that you're putting time and effort into, you deserve to be supported in that. So don't ever be afraid to get that if you feel like you're not good enough, because that's just not true.
Yeah. And any distance, right? They can work with you if they want to just start a 5K. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, I have people training for all the things. Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate sharing your expertise with our audience today. Thank you so much, Leah.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Awesome. Okay, you guys. Well, thanks so much. And please give her a follow. You can watch this full episode on my YouTube channel, the Active Bariatric Nutrition channel. And please consider subscribing to it. Give it a like so that it gets out in front of more people. And also, if you don't mind sharing just with one person this podcast episode so that you think might find it helpful, I'd so greatly appreciate that, because the goal of the podcast is to help as many people as we possibly can. You can also follow me on my social media on Instagram, which is at Active Bariatric, as well as on my Facebook group and TikTok channels. And if you'd like to learn more about my one-to-one bariatric nutrition coaching services, please go to my website, which is activebariatricnutrition.com, and schedule a free discovery call so we can learn more about each other. So thank you so much for being here today, and we'll do this again next week. Take care, everybody. Thanks, Leah.
Bye.